How are we meant to behave when a tragedy befalls upon us? Rabbi Raphael this week begins by saying, if you're a Jew, it's clear. Something very bad happens, the first thing you need to do is thank God. Now, Rabbi Raphael brings this teaching and says, this is odd, right? This is very odd. I would have thought it would have been enough that if some tragedy befalls upon us, it's enough just to keep quiet. Let's not talk about it. Not like when something good happens, we thank God. Something bad happens, let's just keep our mouths shut. No, we are told, there is a teaching, we are meant to thank God. And this is the perplexing question that Rabbi Raphael wants to answer. And his model is Exodus. His model is Shemot. What goes on in Shemot? He says, we look at Shemot and we wonder, why did the Israelites have to go through all of this suffering? And he says, you need to, if we look at what happened to the Israelites, right, we are told that once the suffering, it gets so severe that they start crying out to God, help us. And then we are told that God brings upon them, these miracles, and there's the Exodus, and they suddenly believe. They hear things, they see things, they hear and see with all of their senses God's outstretched arm. And the question that arises from this, as Rabbi Raphael asks, is, well, you're talking about the grandchildren of Abraham, right? This is from the great believer. What, they forgot their belief? Yes. Yes, they forgot their belief. They were in Egypt, they had forgotten their belief. But Rabbi Raphael's model, and this is what he wants us to remember, is know that there is no bad that comes from God. Rather, when something bad happens, it is a sign that good is on the way. And we see this in Exodus. Now, why did this have to happen? He says, they forgot their faith. This is a fact, right? That they no longer, they might have kept Hebrew names. This is a very important thing, but they forgot God. Now, how does human nature work, Rabbi Raphael says, and Rabbi Raphael knew a thing or two about human nature. He says, if you see your neighbor, a mate of yours, and something great happens to them, you think, okay, that's nice. You could see a miracle befall upon them. Beseder, noch besser. Nothing is more powerful than when a tragedy befalls one of us and we see God's outstretched arm. He says, this is the model, this is why it had to happen. The only way that they could see the miracles, that they could hear visions and see with all their senses God's miracles was only through getting through these depths of misery. Moreover, he says to us, Rabbi Raphael, God already put the remedies in place way before the tragedies began. We know that Jacob's sons, right, Reuven and Shimon, for example, why were they called Reuven and Shimon, right? Reuven, supposedly because the parents had said, God saw, our suffering, God saw us, he blessed us with birth, so he's called Reuven, right, for God saw. Shimon, for God heard. Rabbi Raphael says, no, these are remedies to teach you. These names are the remedy that God embedded in the Jewish people so that they would be able to, at the time of their great suffering, this people would be able to see and hear God and return the way they should. And for this we know it was only Jacob's sons, and this is why Jacob only ever becomes Israel once he has all of his children. Jacob is not worthy until he has his children. It is for his children and their ability to go from the greatest depths to the greatest heights that they are only ever called the people of Israel. Thoughts on the Torah portion of Exodus and how Exodus is a model for why Jews should be thanking God for evil and how after every evil comes greatness. Shabbat Shalom.